All right. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Welcome everyone to the Fatherhood Think Tank. 60 to 90 minutes of intellectual conversation with fathers for fathers about fathers. Tonight we have a great topic brought to us, and we're going to get into that tonight. Before we get that started, let's look lively into who our sponsors is over here at the Fatherhood Think Tank. I would like you right now to like, share, subscribe, become a member of our channel so you can be a part. You can maybe one day listen, not maybe one day, you can come on today and share your thoughts about fatherhood and how fatherhood works and things that affect you. Rohan, did you just hear that introduction I just made?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. Sometimes I have to make sure that I ain't just make an introduction. I'm not seeing anything. But anyway, with that being said, our main sponsor of the night is Zeta Chi, chapter Omega Psi Phi, Fort Lauderdale chapter of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity in Fort Lauderdale. Zeta Chi, 1954 chartered. Also, our key sponsor is JAG, Attorney at Law, Miami-Dade, Broward County, West Palm Beach. If you're looking for a lawyer in the South Florida area, don't look so far. Look at JAG, Attorney at Law, Attorney Johnny A. Gaspar, Esquire. He can be reached at his email, j.gaspar at jag1law.com. All right, his phone number is 305-827-8787. Or if you want to see what type of law he practices and how he can help you, go straight down to his website, www.jag1law.com. That's another one of our key sponsors here at the Fatherhood Think Tank. With that being said, I want to welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Ron, the Fatherhood Think Tank curator, uh, mentor, educator, therapist. And we have a really interesting show for you tonight. We have the fathers who are going to be speaking on the panel. These guys, first I want to say these guys speak on the panel every night, every week. So I'm so happy to have them here tonight to talk about tonight's topic. It was a topic brought to me by Rohan. And tonight's topic is about um, men and fathers. There are consequences for your emotions, and that I think that's a very to me that's a very interesting topic because when I'm thinking about men and fathers and our emotions and how we operate and what we do and how we don't do, it can become something that can hinder us as men and as fathers, and even as partners, and how we handle our emotions and what happens when we are. Uh, um, Sometimes I want to say even emotionally triggered. Are we emotionally trigger our children? Are we emotionally trigger our partner? So we're gonna can't wait to hear this conversation tonight. I'm always intrigued to hear what the other fathers have to say about it. While we're doing that, let's go ahead and introduce those fathers, get those fathers on board, let them introduce themselves, tell you a little about who they are, and then we can get into our conversation for the night.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, uh, gentlemen. My name is Rohan Rodok. I'm a father of two young adults. Uh, I'm here as usual to share knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And I'm looking forward for tonight's topic to empower fathers and men on the program and inside and outside in the world.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I'm a father to a tribe of seven young adults, three young women, four young men, and one granddaughter and one grandson, and it's always a pleasure to be here.
Mic check. Hope I'm on. My name is Ed Tenney. I am now transitioning to a single dad, father of three. I have one grandbaby and one on the way. It's a pleasure to be here, and good evening, guys.
Am I up to bat? Chimed in late. Okay, Dr. Frank Gaines, father of four adult children, grandfather of five, with number six due in January. Good to be here after a 1 week hiatus.
It's good to see you, Brother Gaines. Like always, you know.
It's tough. It's tough because we have this is the holiday week. Monday was a holiday all across the country. They take that Monday off because it's FAMU homecoming. So
Oh, that I forgot that. Yeah,
yeah, that's why we all had Monday off, and now it's
Mhm.
homecoming week. So
I got you.
as I prepare for my travels, I was able to fit this in because homecoming is quite an event.
Oh, I got
Florida
Thank,
A&M was
hey, man. Thank you for taking the time to make it
Florida
here.
A&M is the laboratory of my life.
Yes, well, I mean, I think that
It's true. That's a fact. It's the laboratory of my life. Everything that's happened to me came through
I
Florida.
think that that right there, what you just said, is a perfect example of how we can kind of start this conversation, because I think that using an example of a place like Florida A&M, a Bethune-Cookman College, a Southern University, Edward Waters, Florida Memorial, using those type of institutions um, were, I think, powerful in what we're talking about, establishing emotionality for young men and young Black men and women in a world at a time where they may have not had knowledge of what they should do, how they should emotiate, in many aspects. And so, hearing you say that just made me think about how important it is to have a place to go to establish things, because we a lot of times we would assume that, hey, you should establish these things at your home with your parents, and they should be able to show you that. But sometimes your parents can't put you in the thick of the real world, are the place of their safety net of sometimes protecting you from these types of things that would establish some type of emotional response or trigger from you. So you going outside um, to experience these things. And I mean, even I would say even going into the military and going to different socialization organizations where there is a common goal, then it helps you establish some type of emotional understanding for your. And again, I'm not saying it has to be somebody else's, but for yourself, what your emotionality is and how you begin to reestablish it. So I definitely agree with that statement that you made, that it being a center, because I think I I went this weekend to HBCU Cheney University's homecoming, and I took my dad there, and he sat down and was like, "Yo, and I guess it's funny when you have time to observe." He said, "These people, a lot of people here, they were the thing when they was school must have been the funnest time in their life, right?" Because he had observed that it because they was there. He had people of all ages coming back, as old as himself and as young as uh, you know 20 something years old, coming back to celebrate and have a good time at this institution. And it made it almost, he said, "Well, dang, man, these guys really seemed like this was the best time of their life." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, for me, it probably was one of the, if I had to pick a time in life to go back to and say, hey, you can go to one time in life and stay there forever. You can be sure I would go to 1995 and I'll be stuck. I wouldn't mind staying and being stuck in 1995. I tell you, not one bit. I think that not just for the fun, but it also was the height of my intellectual learning, where I understand the importance of the things I needed to learn, as well as the consequences of things based on what you do, what's the real consequence in the world where mommy or daddy can't protect you and can't you have to take responsibility. So I think that was an ideal time of that, as I like to say, rites of passage from being a young whippersnapper boy to becoming the kind of man initially of who I became. And I think that we don't sometimes put enough of that. And again, I'm not saying that only happens there. I think that happens in multiple social settings. Because I believe that people that get the what that is, the PhD, hard knock street life PhD,
School of Hard
they,
Knocks.
yeah, they sometimes get a way better experience and a knowledge of how it established for them. Before we go to the next person, I want to just welcome Brother Charlie on. Let you go ahead and Charles, and let you introduce yourself, so you're not standing out here the odd man out.
Man, I was on the other thing. I thought I was already in, but I wasn't. Charles Maloney. I'm an insurance broker, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 3 kids, wife. That's it.
Thank you. Welcome to, and I guess you also getting ready with Dr. Gaines for y'all travels to the highest hills, I guess. So.
Well, funny you should mention that. We're riding together.
Yes. It's gonna be an adventure.
So yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
So has everybody introduced himself?
Yeah, we already in conversation. So you go ahead and
you know what's interesting about all that? You say if there was one period you could go back to. Yeah, going back to my days on the Hill would certainly be, from the standpoint of having fun, because I didn't have the responsibilities I have now. My intellectual upbringing took place in my home, growing up as a boy under my father and particularly under my mother. Having, as a 14-year-old, she took me to class as she was earning her associates, and I would write papers. And so my intellectual growth really was taking place there. But I went to Florida A&M, and I joke about it all the time. You hear me talk about it and say it's the laboratory of my life, because I went there as a boy, and it was there. I mean, within days, I was literally homeless on the yard, taken in by some brothers. It was there that, 7 years later, I earned a degree. I came there as an 18-year-old, left as a married father of one. So there was truly a transition. So, because in terms of my emotional growth or my ability to handle emotions, now that is without question where I developed in terms of how to deal with my emotions, good or bad. And as you know, we can't go into the process which shaped that because, again, coming into the organization, Ron and Chuck and I share, that was it was a very different time for becoming a part of the organization. And I spent probably a year and a half as a part of that process. So that shaped me emotionally. So my emotional, how I handle things emotionally, without question, came to fruition there under the tutelage of very young men who were only a few years older than me. Mm-hmm. Many of what you know, in our chapter, Ron, Tony Wright and, Mike Jenkins and, brothers like even Kenny Ivory and those brothers and Larry Barnes, those people shaped me. And there are many others. So, yeah, when I say it was the laboratory of my life, I'm not talking about partying and womanizing and those things. Because again, that's where I met my
Who,
wife.
who was talking about who's saying that? Hold
Got
on,
married.
that's not
No,
what.
that's for
Oh,
those who might misconstrue
I hope not,
why
because I
we
made it very
why
clear
we
that
hold on.
the rite of passage from
Right.
other
So it
places,
was
another
so
place.
again, it was a different, for me,
Oh,
again, everything good in my life came when I arrived there from uh high school and left in the state that I was in. It happened through the laboratory of my life, and I always stick to that, Florida A&M. So yeah, that's where my emotional upbringing took place, and I'm very proud to say that.
yeah. Well, I agree. I fully agree with you, brother Gaines, because I think that, and I think this even goes back to the point that we're really trying to get to is what are we doing as fathers and as men for our children to be able to have emotionality? Because I think that the emotionality I had to go to college and be successful was based on exactly what you said. What I had learned from being a child of teenage parents who both had an equal love, right? It wasn't like this, like we a lot of times we see today, like they both was kids thrown into having a child. The only difference is one of them already had another child. So he was a teenager who had two kids, right? But that didn't change of how there wasn't this thing of not having love or the love being reinforced, and then from that the kind of emotionality that occurred from that I observed from other people who might have been, I, I can use examples of siblings, right? I can use examples of siblings. I think the best example I can use is I look at me and my sister, and then look at our siblings. Our siblings had seemed to have had some different experiences with emotionality based on the experience of their parents, right? So our parents, who obviously were teens, who did things and didn't have this marriage kind of connection. It was like teen pregnancy on both points. But when they then got married, both of those mothers got married and had other children who they were married to their husband. And then in those of even in those divorces, you see a different emotionality come from those siblings of ours, right? Than the emotionality we had. And I think that we have to think about that because a lot of times we could feel like that. And I even think, and this is getting this. I mean, I've thought about this a lot because when you observe your family and pay attention to what is going on with not just your family but yourself and how you develop yourself. I also observed that in other relationships involving my own father, right? His other marriages and how the response of his emotionality with with those relationships affected my other siblings, right? And I think that I think about right now his involvement and his emotionality at the high level that he has at this point. Because I'll say this without no doubt, my dad had. Sometimes dads have like two opportunities to be dads, right? They had their first set of kids, then they have another set of kids and they do they allegedly do a little bit better because that first time wasn't their plan and then they had this and that. And then in this case, my dad had a third set of kids. So he had three chances. And one thing I can say is um, I can definitely see the example of how he operates in the third, having the experience of the first and the second, and in the third, he is really recognizing um, the successes, the failures, the things he needs to work on to make sure he gives the best to the third set of children that he has. And that to me is powerful because I think that sometimes people are not even looking and thinking of that. They just say, "Well, look, all these kids are the same. They all my kids, and they all will be all right." And this and that. But you can learn from your experience with them and how they develop and how your involvement was and what your emotionality was with them. And I still say to this day, I look at the three sets of kids from my father, and I say that, hey, for me and my sister, the two older kids, we never probably had a concern about love, right? And so we were secure about love. And we, even no matter what other families we were in blended, we always had this, and I say this for, and I think this for a lot of kids, they have a strong hold that my dad is my dad, right? And I know my dad loves me here or not here, because when he is around, by nature we just gravitate to him and these things will have you. And then we think about, another set of that, you can look and say, hey, with the offset of my siblings, my sister siblings, they didn't fare that well in the same instant because and I sing this because of the divorce and that they had this ideal thing. Like initially we were the outside crazy dynamic. And I know I'm starting to sound, but I just want to put this clear. We were the outside kids initially because when the remarriage, and then having kids in that marriage, we were like the baggage kid, right? In that marriage. And in that case, as that marriage went on, not that we had anything to do with that marriage or anything else, but we wasn't affected by either. I think that, in a sense, when everything went the way it went, that was still our mom, that was our stepdad, and guess what? We still had our dad. And so we didn't lose any love. Whereas for me, I know exclusively for my sibling, I feel like she felt like she lost her dad and it's been the rest of her life kind of chasing and looking for, and that affected her emotionality. And I think her dad didn't even understand maybe how his emotionality and his experience as a dad did that to her. Again, I'm speculating a whole bunch of stuff just from my own mind. Listen, don't hold me to the fact. I don't want to get like, hey, how do you know it? I'm just going on what my professional, personal experience of seeing this and what I thought about it based on the experience of the breakdown. I'm not saying that this is a fact or fiction. I'm just saying this is my experience of what I think and feel that I observe. And that is something I want us to think about is as dads and the type of dads that we are and men, how is our emotionality then later affecting not just our partners who we're involved with, but then also affecting the children in ways that we could never even imagine. I still think about that for my own children. How is my experience and emotionality with their mother affecting how they're going to be? And then, and how do I fix it? So I not even fix it, but how do I face that and deal with it when it comes back to the time that it is addressed? Because we know these things get addressed later on some way or another.
Do you think that she just had a different experience because of her being a female? Because females are more emotional with a lot of things, and we sometimes don't put that much emotion into it. We just kind of do what we have to do at that time. But it's difficult sometimes trying to understand something the way a lady looks at certain things.
Hey, listen, Charlie, I agree. Charles, I agree with you. I think that I can't even. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right.
But I'm only saying it because so uniquely some experiences that both of these, my sister's sibling and my sister, well, my other sister, I have a younger sister, and I think that I have two sisters from my dad. Well, one sister from my dad, one from my mom, who ultimately became the same kind of person. Like as I look, they're not the same people, but their choices and who they became in life, how they revolved around life was very simple, became very similar. And I based it sometimes on just my opinion, just my my what a hypothesis is that they were happy family with a father and a mother and a family, and then that ended. And it wasn't ended in a way where today we would say, oh, let's go to counseling, let's talk about how that affects everybody. These things kind of happen ad hoc wise. But you know what? As I think about it, Charles, I think the problem is I'm leaving out something I think that has affected our communities that may have been a reason why that didn't happen. And um, that might also be a part of it as well. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. I don't want to go much. I talk about myself. I don't like start talking on other people's stuff and then they give me a cuss out or something like that. So
All right, yeah, Ron. Each one of us have experience on this platform. Each one of us have different kinds of emotions, both our own and other people's emotions. So you're not saying nothing wrong. You're just putting out some things that you've witnessed or been through to the group. So I mean, it's a good thing when you can open up and discuss about emotions. Not many men are willing to do that. That's a good thing when men can be open to discuss all aspects of their journey.
so let me ask this question because I had a conversation with a colleague. Maybe today, I think it was today. I might have had a conversation with a colleague. It's funny we were talking about, and I was saying to them, we was talking about the emotionality of a lot of the kids in the school, right? And that they had really high emotionality. Some that didn't fit, as I would say, at some point, didn't fit their gender type or fit who they were. It almost like they had emotions that didn't fit them, but they were acting on it because maybe that's what they have experienced or learned, right? And so I would, as I sometimes look and say, hey, you know, especially with come and speak directly to you, Dr. Gaines, is like from based on your experience of working with kids as well. Are you seeing that phenomenon of the level of emotionality in kids being maybe based on who they're getting their emotionality from, and is there a balance in how they're learning emotionality? Like you have two parents, I think that you have two parents, unless they're both high emotional people, you're gonna be high emotional, right? But if you're kind of not getting both of their emotionality and being able to establish in what place, and then back to Charles' point, like gender type of roles that we would play up or step into when it comes to emotion. Like, when I'm seeing young men at this point, just to me, and it's my opinion, and I'm not I'm an expert, but my word is not the bond, but I've seen them act highly emotional outside of what I would think that males should act emotionally. And I'm always wondering where are they picking up that type of emotionality.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
that's a
Slippery.
that's dangerous. That's a dangerous area to delve into when you talk about uh, where emotionality comes from, and you're talking about young people. Um, it does correlate highly with, of course, who are the adult models in their life. Now you talk about their parents,
Yeah.
but so often, and the situation I work in is an outlier because I don't think it is the norm. It's in one of the most socioeconomically uh, challenged and one of the areas with the highest crime rates in Broward County. So we have so many situations where the loudest voices in the room when it comes to children are those children who come from very, very difficult situations. And yes, whether it be from the parent, guardian, whoever it is that's responsible for the care of that child, whoever is um, whoever has the closest relationship with those children, of course, that shapes them. Now, that is also affected by, the who. When you're talking about a single parent, is it, a home with just a female
Right.
influence? Is it of just a male influence? Is it a grandmother? Is it a grandfather? So yeah, that shape. But then, there are those situations where, um, contradictions, uh, you know, develop because kids are rebellious. So it's like I say, my situation is sort of an outlier, but it's funny. Uh, I deal with a lot of, because I deal, in my post retirement, which is what I'm in right now, uh, occupation. I deal strictly with discipline at this school. I'm the guy, just discipline, and it's a heavy load. Um, but I can, I get a lot of male discipline comes through my office, and I can almost with pretty pretty good predictive outcome tell when I'm dealing with a young man who has not had a male model to model his emotional, because we're products of our environment, and if
Right.
we norm our behavior after the only thing we see is a female, then I'm not saying that those are effeminate behaviors, but we normalize what we see. We normalize the behavior we see if it comes just from a woman, if that's the only person we see
See,
to model our emotions after. If there is no male presence, then we normalize what we see from those who are around us. If all of our models are women, and not to say that there aren't strong female models around that, where the behavior, is much like that you might see from males. I'm not saying that that doesn't take place, but you can tell, in a lot of cases, a lot of that comes from these, they're normalizing that behavior. Maybe it's coming from a female, and that female is dealing with stressors that they shouldn't have to because of the absence of males. So, I mean, it's a very nuanced discussion, and I think it gets very complicated, and it gets very emotional when you talk about that, because people will have opinions, strong opinions about what they think on this, and they will normalize, and those opinions are normalized by what they're seeing in their environment, their lived experience. So
Mm.
there is no singular answer to it as to what we can expect. But I think at best, um, you see patterns develop, that I believe.
Yeah. I listen. I agree. I listen. I definitely think that even when I see this aspect, and this is why I'm even bringing it up, is because I think of some of the kids that I have that I think of some of my students and understanding their situational home, right? That they have dads, right?
Hmm.
But their emotionality is like, but I realize they have dads, but their dads are not the primary caregiver. Their dads are like, you know, and they don't always live with dad in home, nor do they just live with mom at home. Mom lives with other people in the home who they see this kind of behavior, like this back and
Well,
forth. Like there has
Ron, there's also one other factor that
what is that?
all too often we don't get a chance to even know. It's the chemical imbalances. Okay,
Well, yeah,
we
yeah,
we
I got
have
some of
gen-
that.
we have generation after generation of child who is affected by chemical imbalances that took place perhaps during the um, you know that maybe it was prenatal, Okay,
Mhm.
um, fetal alcohol syndrome, crack babies, mothers who smoke while pregnant, mothers who didn't have the proper prenatal care, or as one would hope they would. So all those things take place, and these children, they come into the world. We don't know what it was. All we see is the product. We got a kid here. What's wrong with this kid? We don't understand that there are chemical imbalances, and the children oftentimes they don't look any different than any other child, but their development um, has been affected, and you could see, and that's why we're getting so many children who are ADHD, who are uh, who have IEPs, okay, who have these 504 plans. The causes are unknown. We can't trace it back to what took place. So, in addition to everything that we're talking about here, there's also that factor. It's an unknown. It's a really
Breastfeeding,
yeah.
breastfeeding. I found to add to that, breastfeeding is also something that is not that plays a role too. I've read that recently. Very interesting. Lack of breastfeeding,
Yeah, that's part of Charles.
You said,
Uh,
Ron, you said the lack of breastfeeding.
meaning
Well,
meaning uh, there are certain things in the mother's milk that also help to develop the child, and many people they have stuff like or their looks. So they'll buy like breastfeed. They'll buy like feeding at a Walmart, so I should say, to feed the child. And those are formulated. Those are chemicals. Those are not necessarily natural.
Right.
It was interesting when I read that article how important breastfeeding is for the child.
I think when it comes to the children, and particularly our children being emotional, I think it's more historical than mental, and I'll tell you why. Because you can research the studies about the different suspension rates, and I'm talking about as early as pre-K. And so, essentially, what the studies say is children are minorities, black, brown children don't have a right to be emotional. And if they are emotional, it's going to be met with consequences that are criminal, right? And so, suspension is the first exposure they get to the penitentiary, right? And so, because of that, we we condition our kids to be, and I'm talking about even the small ones, because I think both are victims of different emotional and social or social emotional deficiencies. On one end, you will you will threaten, I guess, threaten a child to the point that you are threatening right out of school, and let him know that his emotions and him being emotional and not having a right to emotions um, will will deem him expelled or suspended. So he's going to get phased out by between the ninth and the 10th grade. And then you're going to have some who's going to make valedictorian, and they're going to be very excellent, and they're going to go to school, and they're going to become some of the most educated cowards you ever seen in your life. And so with that, um, you separate the brain from the guts, because that's what racism does. It separates a culture's brain from their guts. If we can control the brain. We don't really need the guts, right? And so these two, the brains and the guts, never really come back together. And so they lack each other so much. Then you start to get outcomes like gentrification and different things like that. And so I think we're poor studiers and poor managers of our own issues. And I think we need to be spoon fed. And this is the results of, of, of your emotions being suppressed and historically suppressed. And so I think we become spoon fed and have to go on psychological and in some cases scholastic and mental welfare, because if we don't have something fed to us, not something that we can validate and substantiate, but something that's validated by someone else, our own studies means nothing. And then so you start to see the social emotional, and not only just the social emotional, but the social economic effects of that. And so you start to understand that not a particular portion of our society or our culture is affected by this, but all of our culture is affected by that. And so until we study the entire narrative and understand that your losses are my losses, and as opposed to just attaching all of us to our wins and not to our losses, then we still lose. You know how they say, I think in algebra, they say a positive, a negative, or some crap like that, whatever the study is on that. But it's the same thing when it comes to this particular issue. So that's just something I'm just pondering on, and I'm still thinking on it right now. But that's just looking at the bigger picture of it. But I'm gonna leave it right there.
Like what what you just said, and I clearly support, because my class is a class that is proactive. What you're describing, right? It's accepting their behavior and focusing it toward what will be beneficial to them. And what that means is redirecting the energy, all of that, to their academics, right? And so whereas in another standard class where they want everybody to follow into the rope way of doing things, that is almost, in many instances, I will say, that is the non little boy way, right? You need to come in, you need to sit down, you need to have your hands crossed, you need to wait to be told anything, don't get out your seat. You cannot do any other things. You need to be completely still. You need to raise your hand. You need to, and all of those things then become the punitive of what they don't do. That then stops the idea of getting academics, right? Because they can't get past all of the standard policies and procedures to be able to answer questions that they know, right? Because they didn't raise their hand. Put your hand down. You've been stop, Johnny. You can't talk. Close your mouth. When really Johnny has the answer. And then at that point of that shut off, I had to tell a colleague today, listen, maybe you guys want this young person to process, right? Maybe they take a little bit more time to process. So slow down. You can't say, hey man, what's the answer? Oh, next, we're moving on. They might need to process the answer. And then if they don't process, and they know that if you're going to say move on, or you're going to say it's wrong, they're not even going to do that question now. They're going to just say, I'm done. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to do anything that's going to be wrong. If I don't know it, if it's going to be wrong, I ain't doing it, because I don't want the repercussions of having something wrong. I want you to only give me everything right. So if it's all right, you'll praise me, but eventually you'll come back and say, hey, why you didn't come and ask for help for these problems, for this? They asked for help because you're not seeing that they don't understand it, and you're holding them in accountability where that's not the culture that they can understand. I say, listen, spend time and do the work with the young man. I know you don't want to, because it take a lot more time, but do it. And once he gets successful, and I know because it happened for one of my students, I spent the time and worked with him. I remember this young person said they could not read. They said, I don't know how to read, sir. And that attitude was they could not read. Listen, you can't stop this boy this year from trying to read. Every time is a time to read. And I know he could read because he could talk. His behind, he could talk, and he knew. Listen, I'm never gonna let this in. He knew what echolocation was. Now, some of us might not know what echolocation was and what it has to do with who used it, right? He knew that, but he said he couldn't read. He didn't know how to read anything. And I was like, but that word echolocation, none of the other students knew it. And he understood because he had the knowledge to learn. And it's about how bats communicate, how they see, how they move. He understood that. And so once you was able to give that little success, now his mom, who had a negative feeling about his schooling and what's happening, and people didn't like him and he wasn't learning, that turned completely around. I can't do no wrong. You know, I can't do no wrong. He can't do no wrong. We on the right path. But then again, that's changing the culture, changing the emotionality that I would have as a teacher and how I affect the kids with my emotionality, what I want them to do versus what their emotionality is. And now we on the same emotionality. You can talk. You can be loud. You can get up. I'm not throwing you out the classroom for that. But
But Ron, you're talking about people that don't have. Okay, I'm going to go back to this with that kid. There's a kid with that particular kid. You're talking about a kid may, and I think it's different types of education because I think education is like air for me. It's what specific education are you talking about? Because people use education as a catalyst to validate whatever crap they don't know. But with it's different between education and exposure. And so when you bring the two together, most professionals are not equipped with the word I'm looking for, with the experiences, right, to really engage with strategies. So which means if I'm only taught this one particular way, right, I can't really meet all children or even two children where they at because I'm only taught to meet one particular child where they at, even though children have different an array of different personalities. And so if you have children, and particularly if you're dealing with a particular group, inner cities or whatever the case may be, or just a culture or population that have high disparities, then you coming in with limited strategies to engage a population with a diverse and an array of different personalities and what they call it disparities, then you're going to be. It's hard. And this is the hardest part for adults. It's hard to say I'm at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And so them children will make a believer out of you. And you have to know what your limitations are and not be scared enough to ask for help. But when you come in as the authority, you understand, and I'm the standard. You understand? My wife is a teacher, but she's also a student, so she has that dynamic going on. She understands that she's at a particular age, and so she's gonna have to be able to learn whatever the lingo is to be able to communicate effectively with the students that she's dealing with because they're generations apart. But then again, when you're an authority, and we're talking about authoritatism or whatever the case may be when it comes to Donald Trump, but I'm like, we exercise the thing in our own life. We are Donald Trump sometimes. Let me just say it for what it is. So don't get high-minded and thinking, I said, no, you'd be surprised how we function exactly like Donald Trump, depending on the situation. And so I start to pull back from a lot of stuff. I'm really in this sabbatical of rethinking a lot of things because people I thought were allies were not really allies, and people I thought were adversaries were not really adversaries. So I got to pull back and come to whatever the truth that God said is, so I can really assess. You understand how I really deal with people justly. You understand? So that's one of the things I think children, when we talk about different ageism, the three injustices are ageism, not ageism, classism, sexism, and racism. But I think one of the greatest deprived, oppressed populations in not only just the country and the world are children. And so because I'm not a child anymore, I don't think we're going to voice that because we think that all of the oppressions in the world only apply to adults. And I find that to not be true. And so talking about this particular subject, and we're talking about highlighting kids because it's very rare that you hear adults talk about kids with the level of equity that we're talking about them now. Because most of the time when we talk about kids, we're not giving them equity. We're giving them direction and different things like that, and maybe responsibility and certain accountability, but no real equity. Right. And so now that we're talking about kids with equity, then now I can start to see the level of oppression that comes along with being a child. And sometimes we can be the oppressors without even knowing it, and not without even intending to be it as well.
The idea of equity and education is non-existent. Um, you can't have equity uh, when the expectations are the same, regardless of where we start from. you know, if we all come into a room with different intellectual levels and the expectation is for us to all have the same outcome, how is that equity if we're given the same inputs? Um, you guys have touched on so many things. I don't know that I could begin to brush uh, and attach because you just went in so many different directions. We talk about the emotionality uh, on a historical basis. Um, yeah, there is a substantive effect on our emotionality uh, based on our success at what is the driving force that we evaluate people by, and that's the classroom. Okay, it has a tremendous effect. And if you take a class or group who constantly um, realizes a lack of success, yeah, that affects, it suppresses, it causes all types of issues, both in the school, in the home. But I think where that, and I don't want to get into, you know, a history lesson, but that comes from, we have a flawed design that we are trying to use to call education. The school was never designed to make over a society. It was never designed to reshape neighborhoods and communities. Schools were designed
Right.
to build an attendant workforce, okay? From the time that John Dewey developed the school model that we are now in. Now, you can go into a classroom in 2025, in a middle school classroom, and I was in a middle school classroom in 1972, and there is not a material difference between the 1970s and the 2020s between how education is delivered. Society has dramatically changed and been made over. But aside from there being computers and clothes, but we're not using technology in our neighborhood schools to a large extent. So, there's there's just, and so that's one piece. Now, this idea that we are actually engaged in an education process is also a misnomer. We don't listen. All children can learn, just not on the same day in the same way.
Mhm.
Okay, and therein lies, you know, therein lies our problem. It's not what children are doing that creates a problem in schools. It's how we react to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, the problem is not the kids; it's the adults.
Mhm.
Okay, 50% of the success that a child has is predicated on what takes place in the school. The other 50% takes place in the neighborhood. Nothing you can do about that. But you still have that child, and you got that child in front of you for X number of hours a day. And that is more than 50, that is far more than 50% of his waking life. So what we do with that time is what, really is the determining factor. You can offset much of, yeah, two steps forward, one step back. Guess what? You're still one step forward. I'm gonna, I have to stop there because again, there are just so many tentacles
Mhm.
to this, and we can make the research say whatever we want the research to say. I mean,
But
I have done, and this was the basis, you know, for my dissertation. It's the reason why, you know, finished with a bachelor's, and I said I'm going to get a master's. I want to understand why my people struggle so much, and I went in search of that with a master's degree, and found out that all the master's degree does is qualify me for a certain position. So then I said, no, I'm going to go to the PhD. I want to look. I want to find out. I'm going to find the answer to why is it that we struggle so much. And I found that in that classroom environment, there was no teaching taking place. It was for me to contribute to the field, a body of research. So
Mhm.
my practical experience is, and how I apply that practical experience based on, my life's learning is what really is what makes the difference. But let me digress and turn the floor. Let
What?
me
Well,
yield the floor.
you're not that. Listen, I think that you brought us to the turn, now the games that we need to make. The turn, because we took such a. And I'm gonna let Travis introduce himself. Then I'm gonna take that pivot to right to where we right where we need to be in this conversation. Travis, come in, and then I'm gonna take us to that pivot. To that pivot.
Hello, guys. How you all doing? It's nice to sit here and listen to what you all are talking about. I just want to give y'all a little update. I'm now the PTSA president for Henry E.H. Reeves. I'm also the PTA president for Turner Tech Senior High School. Of course, I got my two boys, and of course, one is going playing for North Miami Senior High School, trying to for basketball for that situation. So the lifestyle that I'm living right now. And on top of everything, I wanted to just announce this to you all. I don't know if y'all know, but there is a major impact that's going on right now, which is a program called All Pro Dads. And I'm also a captain at Henry H. Reeves that's doing All Pro Dads, and they're inviting all the fathers, all the males to come into the schools to make an impact into these into like the whole educational aspect. So as I hear you all speaking, I'm also gonna also reach out and give you an invite to our events that goes on, so you all can share, and be a part of whatever's going on with the educational system.
Yeah. And so thank you, Travis. That
Not to
puts
mention, I want to say congratulations as well, man. That's a serious impact, and pray that God's strength and His love guide you.
well, and I think
Appreciate
that this goes right into, yeah. Let's give that clap up to the brother and big ups. I think that puts us in the pivot. It's funny that Travis would come and say what he was going to say, right? Because that puts us to the pivot of, we had this intellectual conversation about education, how education operates, and what have you. But it resorted right back to this part of where dads find themselves, fathers and men find themselves in the education, and through the education becomes showing the example of emotionality, right? So in this case, Dr. Game, when you were saying it was so much to talk on, we want to stay right in the place of who we can talk about, and that's fathers, and what fathers can do, and how fathers operate within it. And then Travis comes and he puts a hammer right on that nail that was sitting. And this is why I say I love this platform. It is a place that all of suddenly you can be having a conversation, and you think the conversation is like, hey, where are you guys at? Where they going? But the fathers will bring it back to what it is. All Pro Dads is an excellent program that's working. And I know I've known about it for a number of years. My boy, what's his name? He's
That
over
be on
there.
the think tank. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about because I went out to a few of his things.
Yeah, he has it over there, Bethune Elementary,
Correct.
where he was at. And he really bugged it up, because again he bugged it up, and this is where the part comes, I say, about teaching emotionality, how it becomes. He did it because his sons were in the school, and he wanted to show an image and bring as many. He was working with us here in the Fatherhood Think Tank, Fatherhood Mentorship Program, all of the programs we had. And then he said, hey, and I said, do it. Don't take, you got so much from here, you can take it there and add, because sometimes people go to these programs and just do them to do them, and ain't had no real conversation or whatever. I'm just holding a position, right? People like to hold positions. Well, it's a difference when you have a position and you're trying to make a change. Not even, I won't even say making a change, but making an impact. Because I don't think a change is what's needed, it's just the impact. And when that impact is there, people recognize. Change comes from the impact. If we had a meteor hit the earth, people won't change. They will probably change how we live and how we do because of that impact when it hit the earth, not because they heard it was coming, but after it happened.
I was waiting, Teeny. I know your wheels over there turning. And Maloney, y'all just sitting there. You gotta kick in. Got to pay your way in this conversation.
Hey, all I can do is, personalize everything when it comes to uh, emotional construct. Uh, I agree with Brother Gaines wholeheartedly. There are so many variables that can affect how any individuals, let alone the black male, um, when it comes to how they uh, display their emotional content. Just hearing how some of you guys talking about the educational system, it's completely different than uh, when I was coming up. I may have mentioned before, I grew up on the west side of Chicago. I went to an all-black elementary school, all-black middle school, all-black high school, and my exposure to other cultures didn't happen until I got my first job in a corporate environment. And so I guess you could say my emotional content um, and how I displayed my emotions was basically groomed, if you will, uh, by my circumstances. Growing up on the west side of Chicago, we had to deal with various issues from a social standpoint. Educationally, I went with the social construct that was all black, and so my historical perspective is completely different than what I'm witnessing today in today's. I mean, I grew up under corporal punishment. That was that was how I grew up, and we learned how to behave. Whether you had ADD, ADHD, or anything like that, those were unknowns. And if you had that, you got the paddle, um, or God forbid, I don't think I ever got sent to the principal's office because the teachers had tools that at the time they were able to use to keep a kid in line. And watching my kids grow up here in South Florida in the educational system, I mean, it's just a completely set of different tools that the teachers um, um, had to use. I mean, my first wife, she was a music teacher, and just dealing with all the personalities of uh, what do you call it? It was a specialty class, music, gym. Those were specials, and her only recourse was go to the principal's office. In my case, when I was coming up, you got your behind whipped, and your teacher called your mom and dad, and you got your behind whipped again for acting out in school. And so your response emotionally to various things, or let me personalize it, my response emotionally to various things was colored based on the social construct that I grew up in. Frankly, like Brother Gaines has mentioned, there are so many variables that these children educationally have to deal with now, and as educators, I don't know if the tools are fewer or tools are just different, but I kind of think that they are facing a greater challenge because of the tools that they have to work with and dealing with the emotional content that these kids are bringing into the educational system and what they have to deal with. Um, and, from a more personal perspective, um, as a dad raising up my three kids, um, uh, you could say my emotional reflection towards them is strictly based on how I grew up. Um, there was corporal punishment in my household. My more so for the boys than the girl. But I spanked my boys when they got out of line. They were spanked. However, the caveat when I was giving discipline to my kids versus when my parents, disciplined me, I sat down and I had a conversation with them about why they're getting disciplined. And this is what I feel is going to help you redirect, your energies appropriately and behaviorally. I didn't get any conversations like that. It was like, come here, you know, turn around, whack, whack, whack. And there was no conversation at all about, how so
Figured it out. You just
yeah, yeah. So hats off to educators today because I think they I don't know. Personally, I think that it's an uphill battle. Uh, Also, hats off to fathers today because I think some of the same tools that were used when I was growing up, by law, there's a certain extent to which you can, spank your child. I was spanked with an electric cord. I don't think you're allowed to do that with your kids today. Uh, but fathers disciplining their kids today, or mothers disciplining their kids based on certain emotional reactions that they're having, I think it's just different. And with the social networking, you add that that construct in everything. I mean, we're dealing with a gamut of how kids respond emotionally to various things. It's it's a it's a pop off society as far as I'm concerned. Kids just pop off, at the very slightest thing. That for us, when I was growing up, if you got teased for something, the worst thing that can happen is meet me after school at 3 o'clock. So I hats off to fathers who are raising their kids in today's emotional construct. It's very different.
And I would like to can I add something to the conversation? Um, as I'm one of the young brothers, and of course going through the motions of everything, having three schools, teaching my after school program, just basically going through basically when we talking about emotional intelligence, when we're talking about these kids and the education that they're receiving, I'm in the school. I see it every day. I have over 50 schools that I have to maintain air conditionings, and I deal with the principals. I deal with the ministry. I deal with so much, and I see so much as well. What the thing that, and even in my program, like I've been doing this thing since 2010, and what I lacked, and I always go about me and what I've lacked when I was a kid. I try to make sure that these kids can get what helped me become successful, what would help me get to this person that I see every day in the mirror. And it was just like I always go back to building the four core values within anybody. Like when it comes down to self-esteem, most of these kids, I mean, I'm talking about even adults, most of these, but we're talking about kids right now. And we also talking about the fathers. When it comes down to confidence, a lot of us don't have that. A lot of us don't even know what that is. And I mean, to really love yourself, to really care for yourself. And when I'm in my program, I just don't tell these kids how, tell them to love themselves. I show them how to. I show them the things that you need to do. And honestly, I have parents that even come sit in my program sometimes, because I always welcome the parents to come involved just to see like what I'm teaching your child when they're in my program. And when it comes down to self-esteem and self-love, they're lacking from that. And I mean, you're talking to a kid to read a book, you're talking about kids to do things, they're not going to do it if they don't believe in themselves. That's one. Number two is, when before they can even like find their purpose, it still goes back to number one, finding out, about how they love themselves. So we're talking about education. We're not talking about math, reading, and science. We're talking about learning themselves, like learning who they are. And we've been so disconnected. Oh my God, I was talking about that the other day with somebody. We have been so disconnected from who we are that it's so hard to find ourselves. So it's like I'm trying to teach these kids not just to love themselves, but to find a purpose, to find the worth of having a purpose. And then basically, we as fathers, we're the leadership that the leadership that they need. But sometimes we're suffering from a lot of stuff as well. And it's like we can't be in position sometimes to even help our kids to even know what leadership looks like. And last but not least, I always go to that core value is sometimes family is the support that we all need, and we don't have it. So I'm just saying, when it comes down to education, we need to focus on how we can develop our kids to have the strength to stand on their own 2 feet and being able to even go through the actual challenges. So that's where I'm at with it.
You said something. You
Go
just said
ahead,
something.
go ahead, Ron. Ron, I'm good. I'm good. But make sure Charles get a chance to speak, and
Oh
then
yeah,
Charles.
Trevor, you just said something so powerful, and I think that I have found this coming back to um, primary and infant level school education at this point, is that you have to no longer teach a college course, right? You're not a college. The education system is based almost to the college level, right? That is standard. Everybody needs to compete against everybody, right? But what you just said is so important, that this should become a family. My class that's how we operate. We have not a competition. There's not, everybody's going to get a grade, and you get your own individual grade, but how you operate with each other helps what grade. Like, if you don't have a skill, one of your classmates have it. You should be able to work with them and do it. I have a young man who is higher than everybody, um, and he corrects me, because that's his job. You give him a job in the family, and that not just the build his self-esteem, but the attention that he needs, because there's an attention that he needs that he's missing, and now he has the attention of being, oh, I am the best reader, and I make sure everybody's words are spelled right. Two things happen. It builds him, and it builds everybody else, as well as his academic. But he does that not as a classmate, he does that as a family member. And if that can transfer over from this classroom environment to back to their home. And that's where some of the stuff we gotta, and it's hard. It's hard I'm in a special case because I have a certain number of students that I can have to do that. Somebody with 30 kids, people would say they wouldn't be able to do it, but I disagree. I believe that you could. The only problem is what Brother Gaines talked about, Dr. Gaines talked about earlier, is the system's not going to let you, because they have a standard of what you should be, your outcome should be, regardless of who you got in the class. You need to have the same outcome as the people who have had everything their whole life. And that's not feasible. You got to find another way to get them just exposed, not glaze all the material and everything over top of them, and then they feel insignificant, and then they feel unsuccessful, and then they feel like failures, and they feel like, why even do this, because it's not for me, and I'm not a part of it. So yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to highlight that.
I got to hear what Maloney got to say, because ain't nowhere in the world you can hurt. It's nowhere in the world you can hold your head like that and not have something to say. Come on, Maloney, get in there. Pay your way.
His screen looks frozen.
He ain't sleep, is he? Maloney, you all right? You up? It does look frozen.
Yeah,
Okay.
his screen is frozen.
Yeah, it
Can
looks
he
frozen. Okay.
hear us?
No, I don't think he could. It does look like frozen.
Yeah,
I'm like,
he's
it's no way in
frozen.
the world somebody can hold that pose that long.
Yeah, his screen is
I
frozen.
thought he was like, and that pose looked like he was just in deep thought. And I'm like, man, I got to hear what this guy got to say. I did not know the screen was frozen. But nonetheless, I was thinking about what you and Travis just said, and it dawned on me that I say, wow, you know what? I think sometimes when we talk about a child's purpose or any person, but particularly a child's purpose, I think if we really want to shape a child's purpose, I think it starts with how we treat their presence. And I think the present, how you treat them in the present, and what you just alluded to, Ron, about you gave them purpose within their presence. And you matriculate that presence into their purpose. And so they may be good at something they don't know they're good at, but you kept them being, or you gave them practice enough to be good at it. And you would be surprised how many children matriculated to so many different things. And I'm gonna be honest, you can't be good at everything. I don't want to learn how to cut grass. I'll tell you straight up. I just hate manual labor. Even though when I was trying to take care of when I had my two boys, that's the only jobs I can get. I graduated from high school, so manual labor is like the job you can get, in which I really sucked at. But you sucked at it when your supervisor tells you sucked at it. And if a white man tells a black man that you suck at hard labor, you know you really suck at hard labor. And so
I'm gonna leave you with this when it comes to education and children and dealing with emotional behavior. If that child is not good at what you're doing, they're going to be good at what they do. So if you don't meet them where they are and pull them and help them find some success at what they're doing, they're not going to sit up there and be the butt of math and reading. They're good at wrecking your class.
Absolutely, I would agree.
Admiration and adulation of the children around them. So I think we cannot understate the importance of meeting kids where they are and creating a captive audience. That's
correct. And when I was in that dead end career, because I didn't know, and you know what? And it's all right to be vulnerable enough to say you just don't know. I was young and impressionable, and I didn't know my capacity, or better yet, even my own capabilities. And so after that job closed down, it's amazing what God got to do to get me out of certain things. So after that job closed down, I was in the habit of going to see my mentor, which was a guidance counselor I had in high school. I make it my business to see him once a year. We have these long 2-hour conversations. And so I went to see him as usual. And just so happened that he had so much opportunity on his desk at that particular time that I wasn't ready for, and I didn't even think I was qualified for. And he said, man, you know what? He spoke to me. We had our regular shing-ding. He said, man, these people came to me and they was asking me if I knew anybody that would be interested in this opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And nevertheless, he sent me there, got me an interview with the people. And they was only hiring 2. And I'm talking about the best of whatever was in Miami at that particular time. Applied for that particular job or those particular 2 positions. Nevertheless, I just went there for the, it's probably the last and only job interview I went to that paid me. I never went to a paid job interview. That was one of the first and last job interviews I went to that paid me. So, no, but it's true. I'm just telling you a true story. And so I went there, and my expectation was, because I had 2 sons at the time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. These people is far out, far exceed my experience or whatever the case may be, my qualifications rather. And I told him, I said, okay, I'm gonna go there. My goal was to go there for the food and the check. That's it. That's my expectation. The food and the money. I knew that they was gonna pay us at the end of this 4-day interview, and I knew they was gonna feed us during lunchtime during the interview. So I went there for the food and the money. And at the end of the whole interview process, I was the first of the 2 they chose. And I couldn't believe it. So I'm saying to myself, wow. And so to me, I thought I was gaming them. because you not even when things happen for you sometimes, and you come from a particular place and you didn't have a particular pedigree or whatever the case may be, you may have think that, you know what, I was able to con them and never realize, and it may even take you 10 to 20 years to realize that what you thought was a con was actually a real calling on your life. And it took me that long to realize that I was never really conning people. I just had a calling. And so I'm gonna thank God for my who God did send me to, because I didn't really care too much about him either when I went there, which was my pastor, Bishop Victor T. Curry. And God used him to really shape my mentality of what it was and what it is that he still has me to do. So I mean, I couldn't tell you that I'm the most coachable person in the world, but I know I'm the most passionate person in the world. And once we get past or know how to shape that or deal with that passion, then we'll probably be friends for life. And I'd have to give Ron his kudos for that, because I'm going to be blunt. Everybody can't deal with me, but Ron has a special calling and an anointing on his life to deal with me, and which brings me to you other brothers, so you can have a better understanding of me. And that's it. Because at the end of the day, I know it's not about me, but I know we don't have to like each other to get ahead. I'm okay with that. That's how I'm conditioned. I'm always okay with that. We don't have to like each other to get ahead. I know what the streets, I know the code. You understand? And on that code, it always said that we didn't have to like each other to get ahead, because the cause was the most important character for that particular thing. And so that's what it is with the Fatherhood Think Tank. The cause is the most important character for this particular thing, and I believe in this particular thing, and that's where I'm at.
You know what, that takes us to almost line, but like more you saying that, right? And I just want to share. I want to say this: if people are looking for the model on how we unify as Black people, Black men, Black families, as a Black community, Lightborn just said it. We don't have to all agree. We just have to be on the same cause. And our cause is us, right? We how we see about getting there and all that stuff don't matter. Is that we stay on the same cause about us. But what happens is we do something else. And we be like, but it's still in the end, it's us. If we listen, you can hate the person, but at the end of the day, if they gonna make it, you gonna make it. So you just say, okay, I hate him, he hate me, but we making it. We gonna paddle this boat right out of this alligator pond, because it's the cause that we're focusing on, and so that's a big part. And with that being said, look, now I'm looking at. I just want to tell you something. I'm watching the play, like I'm watching it on my screen, and I look crazy. I know I look crazy. I'm doing the paddle. I just looked at myself doing the paddling. But this is what you happen when you work with young people. You got to be very distributed. You got to be animated. If you ain't animated, you lost. You lost automatically, because it's context clues and everything that you do, and that helps them, because that helps where they at. And I can't stop doing it. And so people say, look at this man flailing his hands around, doing all this. I was already active, but I'm even more active now. Well, listen, this has been listen. If you have watched this, when you watch it, all I can say is that this has been a powerful 90 minutes, man. If you have heard some of the more, we might have solved some of our community problems, or even laid a lighter, a match down on the bed for the fire to start, for someone to pick up and run with. But we have talked about some things that's so important in our community. And it comes from us looking at our emotionality and what is the consequence of it and how we operate. And the consequence is not always good or bad, right? So, when you look at the topic was like, and this is what we're going to do with the topic every time. The nice topic was, men and fathers, there's a consequence for your emotions. And I think that sounds one way, but I think as we end right now, we see it a completely different way. and it leads in the same strength-based approach that I think that as the fathers and men that we are, that we live our life by and that we operate by. So it doesn't matter what the topic is. I think at the end of every one of our shows, they all gonna have the solution-based, the strength-based that you can move forward with what we talked about. And with that being said, Father, repeat after me. I am.
I am.
I am. I am a man of honor.
I
I
am.
am a man of honor.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of courage.
I say I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of respect.
I am a man of respect.
Fathers, I say that I am.
I
say that you are.
You are.
I say that we are.
You are.
We are.
Championship
We are.
Championship
Here we go.
As we always do, we always lift our children on our arms, our families on our back, and move our communities and our families forward. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We'll see you here again next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock at the Fatherhood Think Tank. You'll see all these great fathers back, and maybe some more, having another intellectual conversation for fathers, about fathers. No. With fathers, for fathers, about fathers. I gotta get them lines down packed, but we got it. See you again next Tuesday at the Fatherhood Think Tank. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good night.